The Democrats are in full-blown panic mode right now, ladies and gentlemen, and it's easy to see why. Even CNN was forced to report that 83% of Americans support nationwide voter ID, meaning the public overwhelmingly backs the SAVE Act Republicans are pushing for. That's why Democrats are scrambling, falling back on the same tired playbook, which is, as we know, emotional appeals and playing the race card. And as always, guys, don't forget, smash that thumbs up button. That's the best way to let me know that you guys are liking the video. And don't forget, subscribe to stay locked in with the content. Let's get into it.
Photo ID to vote, and the American people are with Nicki Minaj, because what are we talking about here? So take a look here. Favor voter ID to vote. Look, I got all this polling on the screen going back since 2018. You'll notice on all of it, it's all north of 75%, 76%, 76%, 76%, 81%, and then 83% in the last year of Americans agree with Nicki Minaj. They favor photo ID to be able to vote.
What about by party? What's the party breakdown?
Yeah, normally you might expect, hey, there'd be a big divide by party with Republicans really for it and Democrats really against it. But not really here. I mean, just take a look here. Favor photo ID to vote. You got 95% of Republicans, pretty much all of them, but even 71% of Democrats favor photo ID to vote. So again, Nicki Minaj posting that on X, and what you see is that the American people, actually, it's not really all that controversial. The American people are with Nicki Minaj, whether they are Republican or even if they are Democrats. We're talking about 7 in 10 Democrats agreeing with Nicki Minaj that you, in fact, should show a voter photo ID to vote.
What's the
Take a look here. Favor photo ID to vote. 85% of white people favor it. 82% of Latino. 76% of Black Americans favor it. So the bottom line is this. Voter ID is not controversial in this country. A photo ID to vote is not controversial in this country. It is not controversial by party, and it is not controversial by race. The vast majority of Americans agree with Nicki Minaj that, in fact, you should have a photo ID to be able to vote.
Yeah, and so as we can see, this is not an issue that the American people are divided on. There are a lot of issues that you can always argue that Democrats and people who support the Republican Party are going to be divided on. This isn't it. Overwhelmingly, the American people believe that, yeah, voter ID nationwide kind of makes sense. Yet the Democrat Party, they're fighting against it because we know it doesn't help them out. They'll tell you in front of the cameras, they'll say, oh, we know that there's no fraud going on. We know that illegal immigrants aren't voting in these elections, but we don't need voter ID. No, because apparently, and you got to love the Democrat playbook. You got to love it because it's reliable. It's reliable as far as you know what's coming next. And yes, the good old race card, let's make it about race. Let's pull at people's emotions. That's exactly what Chuck Schumer wanted to do when he had his conference. And let it be known that this would lead to Jim Crow style restrictions when it comes to having voter ID. Interesting, but take a listen.
It's outrageous that House Republicans would even consider putting in the SAVE Act in legislation to fund the government. Democrats have been clear for months we will never in a million years consider this deeply restrictive and overreaching piece of legislation. Republicans who are pushing for the SAVE Act are trying to kill the funding bill and prolong this shutdown. That's all they want. They want to kill the bill, kill the funding bill, and have a long, prolonged shutdown. Speaker Johnson should tell these SAVE Act Republicans to stand down, or else this shutdown is on the Republican shoulders. Now as for the SAVE Act itself, it has nothing to do with protecting our elections and everything to do with federalizing voter suppression. The SAVE Act is nothing more than Jim Crow 2.0. If the SAVE Act were to become law, online registration, registration by mail, and registration drives would become a thing of the past. If you're one of tens of millions of Americans who does not have access to your birth certificate, or if you're one of the 50% of Americans who don't have a passport, the SAVE Act could make it impossible for you to participate in elections. It would lead to massive purges that inevitably remove legitimate American citizens, legitimate citizens who have the right to vote, from voter rolls. And even married couples aren't spared from the SAVE Act. If you get married and you change your last name, you too would be at risk under the SAVE Act of getting booted off the voter rolls. This is just an outrageous piece of legislation. It's turning the clock back 100 years. It comes out of some right-wing brain that believes that certain people really shouldn't vote, that some citizens are more valuable than others. So let me be clear as I can. The SAVE Act is dead on arrival in the Senate. Hear that, House right-wingers? It ain't happening. Anyone who trying to push the SAVE Act as part of the government funding is pining for a shutdown.
And so on an issue that most Americans actually agree on, Democrats are willing to play the same old games and shut the government down, because this bill would be a major disadvantage for them moving forward. And as much as they'll say that non-citizens aren't participating in voting, they don't want to support anything that actually makes certain of that. They just want you to take them at their word, right? Give me a break. Because really what the SAVE Act is asking for, it's very simple. And it's quite mind-boggling. It makes you shake your head when you think about what states are actually allowing in the year 2026. Which is basically they're going off an honor system. Right now, in a lot of places, you can get registered for a federal election based on an attestation, which is basically checking a box and signing that you're a citizen under penalty of perjury. And so basically all that says is, if you say you're a citizen, we believe you. We won't bother asking or digging into if you're really telling the truth, because, you know, who would lie? Right? But now let's hear from Hakeem Jeffries as he does everything but actually answer the question as far as should only citizens be voting in elections. Take a listen.
Leader Jeffries, what do you make of Anna Paulina Luna talking about attaching the SAVE Act to the DHS funding bill when it comes back to the House with the amendments made for DHS?
That's not happening. The reality is what's in front of us right now is that ICE needs to be dramatically and totally reformed. Big changes are needed that are bold and transformative, period, full stop.
So do you support the SAVE Act, SAVE Act voter ID for elections? Do you support that?
We support dramatic changes to the manner in which DHS has been conducting itself. Taxpayer dollars should not be used to kill and brutalize American people and to violently target law-abiding immigrants. It's not a controversial position. It's the position that the overwhelming majority of the American people hold, including apparently now the NRA.
And so right now you basically have Chuck Schumer, who wants you to believe that this is some sort of racism. This is going to bring back Jim Crow style restrictions if you require voter ID. And then you have Hakeem Jeffries. He wants to actually avoid giving any real type of comment directed towards answering that question right now. But ultimately what this comes down to is Senator Leader John Thune, he's being pressured by Republicans to nuke the filibuster and pass the SAVE Act.
Repeatedly urged the passing the SAVE Act as well as many MAGA Republicans. What is the holdup in the Senate? Why hasn't that been brought to the floor for a vote? And what's your stance on requiring proof of citizenship to vote in elections?
Well, I'm for that. I've co-sponsored the SAVE Act in the past. I think my understanding is that they are still modifying the bill. It includes right now a requirement that you be a citizen to register to vote, but it doesn't include a requirement that to vote you be a resident. So in other words, if you're going to have what we call voter ID or photo ID when somebody goes into the ballot box to vote, that's not currently covered in the bill. So that's been fixed and addressed, and I think the new bill that comes out hopefully will deal with that. But I mean, at some point we'll have that vote. I'm for it. I think most of our colleagues in the Senate are, and I don't, it hasn't had consideration in the relevant committee yet. But I know there's a high level of interest among our members in getting a vote on SAVE Act. I've seen that.
And this has been the problem with the Republican Party and why we see the old school Republicans beginning to get pushed out by a newer brand of Republican, because at some point you got to grow up here. At some point you got to grow up here and be willing to do the job that you have been tasked to do. And we see too many times that Republicans get comfortable and they don't actually have what it takes to do the job. You have control of all three branches of the government, and yet you're not flexing the ability you have to pass the laws, especially the ones that truly benefit everybody in this country, that are not even controversial among the American people. And this is one of those issues.
3 weeks, there has been a lot of news under the surface about the SAVE Act. This is a bill to safeguard our elections and require proof of U.S. citizenship before voting, among other provisions. Now, our conversation on this started with Scott Pressler, who has been calling on Senate Majority Leader John Thune to allow a vote every day since January 1st. Earlier this month, Scott joined me here to make his case.
The American people demand Senate Majority Leader John Thune bring a vote on the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, and let's have proof of citizenship to register to vote. We have this one moment in history with Donald Trump at the helm, with a trifecta Republican government. I say nuke the gosh darn filibuster, pass law after law after law.
That interview went viral and senators went into action. Senator John Cornyn said he spoke to Leader Thune about the SAVE Act. Senators Katie Britt and Dave McCormick signed on as co-sponsors, and several others like Rick Scott ramped up his support publicly. Here's Senator Scott last week.
However we do this, all right, whether it's part of the spending bill this week, whether it's a separate bill, whether we have to stay there, you know, and do a standing filibuster, whatever it's going to take, we got to get this passed. We've got to secure our elections. I can't imagine a Republican senator that would vote against, you know, making sure that you have to have proof of citizenship to register to vote and to vote. Now, how could anybody? I don't know how a Democrat could be against this.
Yeah. After that interview came an avalanche of support for the SAVE Act. You see it here. The tally now sits at 49 co-sponsors, and Senate Majority Leader John Thune said this week he will allow a vote.
They are still modifying the bill. It includes right now a requirement that you be a citizen to register to vote, but it doesn't include a requirement that to vote you be a resident. That's being fixed and addressed, and I think the new bill that comes out hopefully will deal with that. But, I mean, at some point we'll have that vote.
Tennessee Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn, who's a co-sponsor, joins me now. Senator Blackburn, as we look at this, I believe there are either 4 or 5 Republican holdouts, and I'm curious, what's the holdup for some of your Republican colleagues?
Well, I never speak for my colleagues, Kayleigh, but I will tell you this. It is important that people be a citizen, that they show proof of citizenship to register and to vote. And in Tennessee, we have been ranked #1 when it comes to safe elections. And we are so proud of our Secretary of State, Trey Hargett, and his team that have been able to put us in that #1 election integrity spot. And when you go to vote in Tennessee, you have to show who you are. These records have to match up. Every state should be certain that only citizens are voting in their elections. But here is the point. What you want to do is remove the ability of the Democrats to eliminate a filibuster and run roughshod, be able to pack the Supreme Court, be able to add D.C. and Puerto Rico and Guam as states, making certain that we preserve the integrity of our nation's elections.
I think this one is on the Republicans. You got to get it done. Nuke the filibuster. Do what you need to do to get this done. A majority of the American people agree that nationwide voter ID isn't some big issue, isn't some controversial issue. Don't worry about if Democrats get back in office that they're going to be able to add D.C. as another state in Puerto Rico and do all these things hypothetically that you're worried about them doing. Worry about what you can control now. You got the trifecta until November. You have the ability to be able to pass bills and get things done for this country. And if Republicans can't do that much from now to November, then we'll see what happens come that time. But I'm confident in saying that if they don't, the American people are going to, by and large, vote for Democrats, and then we'll have even more issues to deal with because they'll spend their time looking to impeach the president, and then we'll be getting even less done right now. That's just my personal thought on that. Let me hear from you. As always, smash that thumbs up button. That's the best way to let me know that you are enjoying the content. Don't forget, stay locked in with the content by subscribing to the channel. And as always, until next time.